Hi, I'm Allie with PotomacBeads. Join me in making these Clover Flower Earrings. They're a lot of fun, super simple, and hopefully will springboard a ton of design ideas for you. Remember, if you need any materials, we're happy to get them to you, and shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com. Gather up your materials and let's get started. So to begin our Clover Flower Earring, we have the supplies laid out of 11 OC beads. I'm using the Crystal Lab Full. I have my Monty's, and these are a jet silver Monty, and it's an SS12 Monty, or a 3mm. If you don't have that, don't worry, you can omit that and use the 3mm bead. I'm using a Potomac Crystal 3mm in jet, which is going to be on all four corners of the piece. Some 15 O's in some silver lined red, and then my Floor Leaf Clover, which is a 14mm Potomac Crystal, and it's in the cyan color. To begin, I have a size 12 beading needle. You want to use a 12 or a 13 for this, and it's attached to some .006 white wildfire beading thread. About 3 feet will get you both earrings made. I have here 16 beads on a piece of the thread that has a stop bead at the end. The stop bead is always going to be a bead that's not included in the project. Use one of those so that way it doesn't confuse you as you get to the end. We're going to be doing, for the back of the clover to hold it in, some circular peyote stitch. To begin, after adding 16 11 OC beads onto your needle, I want you to take your needle and thread and go back up through approximately 4 beads. Take that needle and thread then out after those 4 beads to put those 16 beads into a circle. From here, we're going to do the circular peyote. So coming out there, what we're going to call bead number 1 that my thread is coming out of, I'm going to skip bead number 2 and go through bead number 3. On my thread and needle, I'm adding one more of my 11 OC bead. Once I'm coming out of bead number 3, I'm going to add a new bead to my needle and thread, skip over number 4, and sew through bead number 5. What this is going to do is add an additional 8 11 OC beads as I go around the circle, picking up a bead, skipping the next one in line, and then going through that 3rd bead. I'm going to be adding 8 beads onto the exterior of this circular peyote stitch. Now you may see a little bit of extra thread showing. Don't worry as you go around the stitch, adding in your beads, because as we add the next row in, doing what's called a 2-drop peyote, will really hide a lot of that thread. When you get to that stop bead here, just jump right over top of the stop bead, kind of pushing it to the back of the project. Adding then a bead, skipping a bead, and sewing through the next one in line. Circular peyote is different from tubular peyote in the fact that you let it keep getting bigger and bigger. Tubular, it'll be the same size and you'll start to pull it again into that tube shape. Once you add the last bead, your 8th bead, you're going to be coming back out of bead number 1 that we came out of when we added our first bead in this, what is actually our 3rd row of peyote stitch. I want you to step up into bead number 1 from this 3rd row. From here, we're going to go around the circle, adding in more beads as well. To fill the gap, instead of adding 1 bead between each one of our 8 beads in this 3rd row, you're going to pick up 2 11 OC beads. Coming out of bead number 1, sew through bead number 2. Again, 2 more beads. Out of bead number 2, sew through bead number 3. So you're always adding 2 beads as you sew through that exterior bead that we just added. What this is going to mean is that we're adding a total of 16 beads on, 2 each between each of our 8 11 O's. As we're spinning around then and adding our beads, it's nice and easy to do this row because the gaps are there and that bead is sticking up. If you find yourself having trouble keeping focused with all 1 color bead, pick up a 2nd color to do that 3rd row where we just added 8 beads, and that'll help you keep in mind which beads you need to sew through. If you need additional help with the peyote stitch, keep in mind we have lots of peyote videos, including many of the circular peyote. From here, I'm adding my last 2 beads, and I'm going to sew then back into bead number 1 that my thread was coming out of. to step up again to continue that circular look, I'm going to go through the first 2 beads that I added in this 4th row of the peyote stitch and come on out. We're going to be doing now a version where we're going to square off that rounded peyote stitch. Here's where I'm going to include my 2mm Potomac crystal rounds. 2 or 3mm will work. You can see in this design here I use 3mm pearls. The 2 versus the 3 will not really affect the look of the piece at all. Coming out of those first 2 beads from row 4, you'll notice a gap between those and the next 2 beads. I'm going to put in 1 3mm bead and sew through the next 2 beads from that 4th row of my peyote stitch. After 1 crystal, I'm going to add 1 bead and sew through the next 2 seed beads from that 4th row. Alternating, adding in 1 crystal, sewing through the next 2 seed beads, then an 11-0, sewing through the next 2 seed beads. What this is going to do, because the 3mm beads are larger than the 11-0, it's going to start to square off this design. Alternating again, 1 11 between my rows of 2, and then 1 crystal. My last step that I need to do is 1 last 11-0, and then through those 2 beads here. You can see at this point, pushing the stop bead kind of towards the back so you don't see it, that you're really getting more of a squared effect. So we went from getting that circular peyote into a circle to now making it into a nice squared look. Coming out right next to that crystal, through the first 2 beads that our thread exited, I'm not going to go through the crystal. The crystals are going to be independent. We've added them and we're not going to go back through them until the very end when I attach my wire guard as well as my ear wire. Instead, I'm going to go through the 11-0 that sits right below the crystal. From here, I'm going to go through the 2 seed beads that sit after the crystal. I'm then going to step up into that first 11-0 seed bead. Once I'm there, we're going to get ready to add some of our silver lined red of our 15-0 seed beads in order to hold in and create a bezel for our nice clover flower. As you come out the 11-0 and step up to that side, what you're going to want to do is add 4 of your 15-0s onto your thread and needle. These 4 15-0s are going to work to hold in your crystal clover like a little package. You're also going to add a 5th bead to work as a connector. After that, add in 4 more of your 15-0s, and you're going to go over to the next 11-0 in line, backtracking. When I go to the next 11-0 in line, I'm going to sew through the 11-0. So I have a total of 9 beads on, 4 for each strand and then 1 for in the middle. And I'm going to sew back up through those last 4 15-0s. When I sew through those last 4 15-0s, you see how the thread is right there? You want to make sure that it's nice and tight and that you don't see any extra thread exposed. From here, add 1 15-0 as a connector bead, and then you're going to add 4 more 15s. Once those 4 15s are on, go ahead and sew through the next 11-0 in line, basically counterclockwise. From here, go up through those 4 beads that you just added, not going through that 1 connector bead, and again, give a nice tight pull, making sure that you don't have a lot of extra thread showing. From here, I'm going to get ready to pop my crystal in place. You're going to have each little petal of the flower sit so that it's facing one of the black crystals there. From here, add 1 more 15 as a connector, and then again 4 more 15s. From here, go through the 11-0, that's sitting last. Back up through the 4 15s. Remember, just 4. Give it a nice tight pull again. From here, I want you to add one more 15. That's going to act as a connector from the first strand that we did. So there's my 115. And then you're going to go over here and go down through those 4 beads with your thread and needle that sit prior to the 11-0 that your thread was coming out of. So I'm through 3 there. And I need to get through that 4th one. When you're through the 4th one, look at the 11-0 seed bead that sits right below it and see what side you need to go into the thread. So you can see my thread's coming out of the bottom there. I'm going to make sure to go into the top. What this is going to do is make sure that that 11-0 sits straight and perfect, and that the thread actually acts like a Y holding in the 15-0s there on top of it. From here, go ahead and sew up through those 4 15-0s that you just came down. If you want to, you can skip this next step that I'm going to do and just have your center remain open for a little bit more of that red bling. You can also add an 11-0 seed bead or follow along with me and add in the Monty. It doesn't really matter what size Monty you're adding. I'm adding in an SS12, which is about a 3 millimeter. Coming out of that row of seed beads there, that initial row, I'm going to sew through the Monty from one side to the other. The Monty has 2 holes basically, and they intersect along the back in a cross section. I'm going straight across, and then also going to go straight across to my next group of 4 seed beads that sits directly on the other side of the one I'm coming out of. As I go down there, I want to make sure to flip my Monty so that it's sitting with the crystal face up. So through the 11-0, that's below that row of seed beads, and back up through that row of 4 and out. I'm not going back through the Monty, I'm going just out right after that row of 4. This is why it's important to have a size 12 needle on here, because the 11 or the 10 will not want to go through. From here, we're going to hop over. Remember, we have those 4 beads in the corners that work as connectors that we never went back through. I'm going to sew back through 1 that sits right after the 4 beads that I'm coming out of. And then I'm going to go down through the next 4 beads in that row. So I was coming out of the one here on the right, and I'm going into the one right next to it. Making sure not to get your thread into a simple knot. From here, I'm going to go back through that same 11-0 seed bead, up through those 4 seed beads again, and when I come through those 4 seed beads, I'm going to sew directly through the other hole of the Monty. So you're going straight down this second hole, basically, of the Monty bead. To hold that in place then, on the opposite side, you guessed it, we're going to sew down through the 4 beads here on the opposite side. Now keep in mind, in the comments too, you can comment which method you're going to use, what you picked to decorate your center with. So if you do a little comment below, say which colors you're using, what you're going to use on the corners, it really helps to give people ideas and inspiration if they are beading along and creating it as well. Also, if you haven't yet, make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. From here, I'm going to go through the 11-0, and then we're going to work our way back towards the corner. So we are going to go through the 11-0, coming out those 4 15s. I'm going to go through the 2 seed beads that sit right after that 11-0. And then that puts me right to the corner to go through one of those seed beads. Another idea, if you want to, is actually using one of the Montys at the top so you can come out of one of the Montys for the design. From here, I tried a bunch of different connection ways and decided that I liked simple the best. adding in 1/15 when I'm coming out of that corner 3mm, grabbing a wire guard or a wire protector. If you don't have one, I would recommend about 6 seed beads. The wire guard or wire protector, you're going to go up through the little channel on the side, across the horseshoe shaped U, which has a little groove with the top sides almost sitting like a wheel frame, and your thread is going to hide right in the middle of there. These are amazing to have if you don't have them. I use them in a ton, 90% of my earrings. I like the way that they make everything fit and they give it a nice polished look. From here, add 1/15 seed bead and go back through that same 3mm crystal. Now these are fairly light because it's only a 14mm crystal. If you want to, you can reinforce the thread so that you have more than one going along the wire guard. And then from there, go down through the next 2 15s in line right after the crystal. Go through the 11 right after there, stepping back towards the back of the project. From here, go through the next 11/0 seed bead that sits right below it. So going down on an angle, you'll follow the thread line. And from here, take off the stop bead, grab your thread ends, and simply tie them together in a square knot, right over left, left over right. You can do that by switching hands or just reversing which thread you pull and hold the opposite one. From here, go in with your scissors, or I prefer a thread burner or a thread zap. Burn the thread edges down and then straight down flush to the back of the project. From here, grab your ear wire. Whenever you open an ear wire, you want to grab with your needle nose pliers. Turn that to the side rather than pulling back. Slide your wire guard on and push it back into place. This gives you 2 lovely Clover Flower earrings. They're really great in different colors, different designs, and you can also switch this up and try it with the square crystals as well to see how it is. You can see how much the design can differ based on what you use on the corners, whether or not the colors are the same as the crystal, or whether or not you change it up like this Bermuda blue as well. Hi everyone, I'm Allie with PotomacBeads. Thanks for joining me in making these Clover Flower earrings. Remember, you can switch it up. You can use some squares, you can use different beads at the top and the bottom, try some briolettes, some drops, as well as different beads in the middle. If you do happen to need any supplies, remember that you can shop with us online. Also, give a little thumbs up as well as comment below, join in the conversation and the community to help everybody become better beaders by suggesting things that might spark their imagination, saying what colors you're using, and also giving a little encouragement for others to try. As always, thank you so much for watching and enjoy your Clover Flower earrings.